Thank you for joining us again. The purpose of this panel is actually to a few different things, or a couple different things. We want to, as we hold these challenges, as we hold these computing classes, to also be able to provide some insight and resources from some of the people in this community on how to increase diversity, how to increase your opportunities as well in tech, to dispel maybe some misconceptions that you may have about what it takes to get a job in tech, as whatever you're wanting to go for, whether it be engineer or receptionist, whatever the case may be. So that is what we're here to discuss, and joining us to do just that today, I'm going to start from closest to me all the way out. I will let you introduce yourself and kind of tell everybody here what you do and a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ariane Jansen. I've been working in the tech industry for about 11 years. Currently, I'm at Facebook. I work on the mobile speed team, where basically we go and figure out why Facebook kind of sucks sometimes on Android and try to make it better. So I do there basically everything from instrumenting on the device all the way through back-end services to aggregating lots of traces and trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Previous to coming to Facebook about 1.5 years ago, I was working at Windows CE, Windows Phone, and the kernel and file system team, working on mostly file system filters, registry, and eventing. Spent 1 year in Windows telemetry, on the telemetry system there, and then I moved on over to Facebook. It's been actually pretty friggin' awesome. So.
Thank you.
My name is Margaret Maynard-Reid. I'm an Android developer. I've been working on Android development since 2012. Currently, I'm a consultant at MSR, Microsoft Research Cognitive Services team. I build Android apps to showcase how we can use machine learning services. I'm also an organizer and the Women Techmakers lead for GDG Seattle, Google Develop Group Seattle. So I organize a lot of the meetups we might have met before. And so I build Android apps and organize events and help bring more women into the tech community.
Thank you.
I am Bobby Black. I am kind of dual-hatted. I work for both the Army Reserves as a cyber network defense operator, working in the SWAC over in Kuwait. I'm also currently, I work for FEMA as an information technology specialist. I've been in IT for about 10 years. Before that, I worked for a small software company as a security analyst over in Bothell, Imprezio Incorporated, and I've also worked as a contractor for Google doing small IT work about 3 or 4 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So one of the things that we see a lot of statistics coming out about now are about how many people are in the industry who are self-taught. And there was a time when I think we would hear about the numbers of women in tech, the numbers of minorities in tech, and how only maybe certain schools, certain companies were scouting or pulling their employee base from. And I think a lot of things are changing in the industry right now. And, excuse me. So we're going to get to our first question, and that is, what was seen as a problem, which was, again, the lack of certain groups or underrepresented groups in tech, it's become an opportunity. A lot of organizations are creating diversity or inclusion groups within their organizations. So in order to first, to create an opportunity, we have to identify the problem or problems. So from your own perspectives, what is one problem that exists or has existed that you think has kept the numbers of women, blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, a lot of underrepresented groups low in the industry, or maybe even people who don't have a degree from, you know, a certain university or not? And anybody can tackle it.
I can go first.
I will talk first. As the Women Techmakers lead for GDG Seattle, I organize events. One of the problems that I see is that at these events, or the events I organize, or the events I attend, you look around yourself, there are very few women around me. So that is a problem. But we took that as an opportunity, and we try to increase the number of women participants at the meetup. That's actually how Women Techmakers got started.
Okay.
So if we're looking at things like there's a number of different reasons and varied reasons that we have low numbers of blacks or Hispanics or women in tech. And it's going to vary, company to company. It's going to vary from region to region. When I was working on the kernel and file system in Windows CE, I was the only woman engineer out of 50 men. But it wasn't necessarily that people are being bad or terrible, it's just sort of how things were. So one opportunity that I think you're speaking to, that there just weren't a lot of examples and there wasn't a lot of understanding of that there was anyone even looking like me, is we do things like the Women Who Code and all these types of things where we have examples and we have mentorships that we're really working on now. And so one thing that I think we're doing well in the industry is bringing out people who look like other people, so you can see, aha, someone like me up there is really important.
Yeah, I would agree too. It's not. I don't really think it's the industry's fault. I think it's just the culture and the community's fault that people that look like us aren't out there doing stuff like, because it's just not promoted in the communities and stuff like that. And I mean, now again, there's more things happening to get people into the STEM area, but it's just like my nephews and my cousins, when they go to high school, when they're in college, they're not like, hey, go do IT, hey, go do engineering, mathematics, science. They're like, hey, go play sports. You're gonna be an awesome athlete. So it's mostly about the community and stuff like that. People needs to promote it, show them that it is an option and that is the way to go.
Okay. So talking about representation, groups seeing people that look like them, or we were talking earlier, we were having a discussion about nerding properly and having just community, people that you can relate to, that actually maybe make you feel like, or allow you to feel like being in that industry is a possibility. How do we increase visibility, community, and resources for underrepresented communities? And what does that look like? Or do you have any real world or personal examples? I know you brought up the Google Developers Group, but are there any other real world examples that either of our other panelists have seen that have been effective in increasing those things, increasing the visibility and community around underrepresented groups?
I actually have a very good example
Oh,
here,
please.
personally myself. So I got a chance to network with a group of women Android developers virtually via a Slack group. It's called the Android Study Group. It has many really famous Android developers. And then we have this group of women. We will exchange ideas and tell each other where the conferences to go to and submit the call for proposal, tips on public speaking. And so we just help each other to gain the visibility. So many of us have become very famous now in the Android community because of that.
So for you, it's been increasing visibility is networking. So networking is a big part of that.
Yes, networking.
So in order to increase people's networks, we also have to lead people to those networks. They have to know that those networks exist. So do you think that there are organizations doing a better job now of promoting themselves or letting their communities at large know that they're out there and that they exist to get those people more familiar with those jobs in tech?
I think a lot of times it can be a particular organization you were talking about. For example, I'm talking about Women Techmakers Lead, or you talk about Women Who Code, etc. But this particular networking opportunity I talked about is not that formal. So it's about, if I know this networking opportunity, I start adding other women, and then you might add other people, and then they just get to know about this opportunity existing.
All right, and then for the people who have the skills already, so we're not talking about just like getting people interested in tech, but people who are already in tech, and maybe somebody here who's shown up today and they don't already have that network in place. They're off the radar. How do we increase visibility for the people that have the skills to compete in the market, but maybe they don't know where to go? They don't know maybe the right groups or the right people to meet to find out how to go work for a startup or how to work for a Google or a Facebook. Or even start their own company, start their own thing, but network with like-minded entrepreneurs.
Don't be afraid to start from the bottom. Like I see, I have a lot of friends that they're good at programming, they're good at web development, they're good at all kinds of things, but they try to put, just because their skills are up there, they want to start at that high level. But I started at the bottom doing basic help desk support, and I was like, I have top level certifications, some good schooling, trained, but I was like, in order to get into the industry, I've got to help people change their passwords. And I went from helping people change their passwords to setting up printers to, building databases to doing security work on, top level, the 5 top insurance companies in America. So it's really, you have to start at the bottom, and once you can show your skills to your boss, then, your boss will promote you, and you want the next job, you're good to go. You have to start from the bottom. I think that a lot of people forget that everybody somewhere started, unless, we're so far advanced in tech, unless your next idea is just the next Facebook, which is really hard to do, you pretty much have to start from the bottom.
So actually kind of speaking to that a little bit, what do you think is a common misconception that you hear from young people or people in general that you think keeps them from pursuing a career in technology?
So one thing that I hear from women a lot is that they have to be coding all weekend or all night, or they have this stereotype that they don't feel they fit for whatever reason. Maybe they don't enjoy Star Trek. Who knows? I don't understand that because I do, but that's what I hear. And the fact is that there's a huge number of different people and diverse people who actually do enjoy coding. I happen to enjoy, like cross-stitching along with my kernel development. And so figuring out ways to let people know that it's okay to be unique and different and also enjoy coding is something that's really important for us to be able to do. And so maybe you like hiking, maybe you like kayaking, and you should enjoy that and also enjoy coding and discuss it that way. So if we can get people to understand that, that would be great.
I feel the same. I get a lot of friends that come and they ask me, I don't know, they just figure that I'm super smart. I'm not super smart. I consider myself just getting by. I get lucky every now and then, but I know my job. I know my skill. If you ask me to, do code, do some C#, C++, I'll just look at the screen and just what's happening right now. But you put me in front of a couple of servers, and I'll network everybody in here, have them secure in 10, 15 minutes flat. It just know your job, know what you want to do. I think that's another thing. Most people come into IT and it was they want to code, but they don't know what they want to code or what they want to do with it. I've done everything from desktop support. I've done coding. I've done web development. I've put ads on Craigslist. I'll build your website for $99. I've done a lot in the IT world. I've done security, but I love desktop support. I love customer service. I love interacting and working with people. So that's now where I've built my niche. So that's touch everything out there, see what you really like, and just become great at it. Don't become good at it. Become great at it, and you'll get out there and you'll flourish.
So I'm hearing that a common misconception then is that you don't have to fit into a certain mold of what people think. I guess because it's corporate culture, right? You're hanging out with people, you're working with people, and so you don't have to like a particular thing. Although again, I don't see how anybody could not like Star Trek. But,
I know.
Again, but or a misconception that you have to be a PhD in quantum mechanics or theoretical physics in order to actually code or design, which is something I've heard often. Because we've spoken, we've had this panel in some other cities, and that's one thing that I do hear is people think you have to, have a certain aptitude for mathematics in order to be in the tech field.
I suck at math.
Yeah, and so there's so many different fields in tech that you can be involved in that is probably a really big one, a misconception. So kind of based off that, getting people into technology or getting a technology mindset when they're young is really critical, I think, to getting people on the right path. So if you could introduce a program or a skill, some type of class maybe, into the elementary school system that would help prepare young minds for future as tech leaders and innovators, what would that skill or that thing, that program be?
So I don't know who else here has 3 and 7-year-olds. Holla. Yes, my people. What? 10 months, perfect, you're coming up on it. So seeing my 7-year-old going into public school right now has been very fascinating to me. They learn lots of reading and lots of math, and that's fantastic. They're starting to break things up, so it's a little bit more individualized. The largest thing I see missing from that would help them is engineering is logic. So a lot of what we do here, you may not be good at math, you may not be good at like AI, but you're probably good at breaking down really hard problems into smaller problems and assembling them logically. You don't have to teach people programming in order to learn logic. And so I think setting kids up for success later on is going to be something that is like, aha, interesting little logic problems. And I really wish they would do that more. So I give my kid lots of logic problems because I'm, yeah, that mom.
Anybody else?
I think learn programming in a fun way, maybe programming robots. Mm-hmm. Just an idea.
Yeah, no, that's Sphero and some other robots are really...
Either toy robots, Lego robots, and recently there's a humanoid robot called the Pepper, the robot. You can program that robot with Android now. So I think probably even elementary school people can do that.
And
Pretty much the same thing. It's, like I said, our technology is so advanced right now. There's so many, an elementary school could easily buy, 5 or 6 Raspberry Pis, and have them network, have the kids do a simple hello world type thing. Being able to do that and then see that they created something that I would imagine that would, advance them wanting to do more.
now, again, going back to people thinking they have to fit a certain mold or look a certain way, I have to have a certain degree. Do you know anybody who is self-taught that you've worked for that has been successful in the business and kind of maybe what they did to get to where they're at that you can give as an example?
So I'll go first. I am self-taught. This is how I get started in 2012. I took an Android certificate program from University of Washington. Doug was my classmate there. And that's how I got started with programming. Then I worked as a teaching assistant at that program. Then I became an instructor. And now I work at Microsoft Research as an Android developer.
That's awesome.
So I worked with a number of people who are self-taught. Actually, my husband is self-taught. He never got a degree in computer science. And there's also 2 other people, one person who didn't get a high school degree or a college degree at Microsoft there, and another guy who didn't get a college degree either. Ultimately, the college degree helps, I think, with some of the recruiting process, but in terms of people actually getting into the job and being successful at it, I'm not really sure that is the case. So the people who are self-taught work harder to get their foot in the door. For example, my husband came in through game testing at Xbox, which is like 18 hours a week for $8 an hour, and he worked his ass off. But now he's working full-time at Microsoft and is very, very successful there. A lot of the time, the recruiting process doesn't even look at necessarily what degree you have. They'll just pull you in and see if you're actually smart enough to do the job. So.
I'm self-taught, but I've got a good friend. He's pretty much self-taught. He's I'll say an inspiration to me. I met him about 2008, 2009, working desktop support for NMCI, and I've seen him work crap jobs for the longest, doing whatever he needed to get by. And I'd say the last week he got a new job and he's making more money than I do, and he's not been through, I'd say, the formal training that I've had, and I'm always happy to see him, growing, because when I have IT problems, he's the guy I call. And so it's always good to see him doing better and better.
And I'd like to add on to that. A lot of the stuff that you learn in college is, even with really fast classes, is usually a couple of years behind where the industry actually is. So a lot of the time you're going to be learning on the job anyways. So having that formal degree certainly helps something. But your ability to have just-in-time learning is usually what I call it, where you have things being thrown at you and you can sort of absorb them and move forward, is going to help you out significantly more than knowing that you took some random physics class 2 years ago, or as it were 12 years ago for me.
Well, I think that's definitely good information. And I think one of the things that I do personally is I work with parents in the internet safety space on the side. And one of the things I've always had to tell parents is that even with technology, nothing has changed with parenting, because the most important thing you can do with your children is not keep them off the internet or off smartphones. The most important thing you can do is still just have open and frank conversations with your children. So in that regard, the approach to parenting hasn't changed, but I hear a similar dynamic with tech, in that if you don't have what culturally may be the credential, if you actually just have desire and drive and passion and are willing to be realistic about where you have to start and what you have to do to get in the door, that you can be successful, that it doesn't have to be some prescribed path or notion in order to get where you're going, which is actually kind of how I started in the industry. When I was 19, I just started editing somewhere and moved up, and it was just, I didn't have a degree for that, but fortunately I found the right people and got into it, and it was the same thing. You just work hard, and when you do work hard, people notice that and they want to give you opportunities, because there are certainly people who don't want to work quite as hard, and so when you do work hard, you stand out. So if you were giving, and I think we've actually already answered this question, so I'm going to move on to something else. So we've talked about increasing the visibility. If you could just, actually, you know what we're going to do? Because you guys actually done a great job answering the questions I had, and were kind of where I wanted to go with this. So I'm going to take questions from the audience, because they may have better questions than I want to ask. Anyway, so anybody from the audience? Your hand went up first, sir.
Perhaps my gray hair will show my age, but having been in the industry for 25, 30 years, I'm curious on two questions. How much does a culture, in italicized in quotes, of a company affect either positively or negatively on the recruitment and creating a diversity workforce? My experience has been that the culture often means hiring like-minded people, similar either ethnicity, gender, experiences. So that's one question, if you could talk about the culture, because we hear a lot about the culture of companies. The next part is, and I'm also self-taught, there's been great debate about the value of traditional education. The Puget Sound Business Journal a few weeks ago printed an article about a young woman that got an education from General Assembly. She couldn't even get the interview. Yet we talk about we can't find qualified people. So if you could talk a little bit about non-traditional resources, yet the statistics seem to say unless you have a degree from a top university, you're not getting the ideal jobs. The statistics are saying something different. I'd like to maybe have you hear your perspective of your perception on the statistics. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I will go first. I will say whether or not you have a degree, when companies recruit, they will still look at what kind of experience, projects that you've done. So having a degree and certificate is helpful, but a lot of it is also showing your capability. So give you an example. I worked on my projects. I will publish my app and also go help out at meetups and maybe teaching at University of Washington. These are all examples of showing my capability, because I don't think people are going to just hire a developer because you got a certificate somewhere. But if you show them that you're capable of it, then you have a better chance. Now, of course, I'm speaking from a candidate perspective, not from a recruiter perspective. But what I'm trying to say is that just to show your capability. Here's also another example is I also worked for startups where they paid very little. And then I worked to move up to other startups where the standards are a bit higher in their hiring and they pay a bit more. And then you just kind of move up in the job where I think with Microsoft, the bar for developer is much higher. But I don't think I would have got the job I have today if I just got a certificate program somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think degrees matter so much as long as you have the experience. And it's not, because I have a lot of certificates, but my current job now did not care about those certificates. And so they hired me solely on my experience. So I think it's having a degree too, it's nice. My job actually wanted somebody with a degree because I've had so much experience and I was able to show them that I had the experience, I was hired. And I've seen it before in some of the companies that I worked for that people have they've gone in for the interview and they were able to show that they've been doing this for a while, that what they've done, what they've created, what they made is out on the market. And so those companies were like, well, hey, we want to hire you and bring your company, bring your small situation into ours. And so they were hired on that. And so I think, yeah, you have to have experience, but it has to be a good experience. You can't have worked for just some regular company or and been another employee. You had to have been the star employee and done exceptional work for that company to where you stood out from everybody else.
So this panel is about diversity in tech, and so I'm really curious if any one of you is willing to answer this or not. I understand, but maybe examples that you've seen facing adversity in your own lives, personally maybe, or even peers of yours, that really prevented people or maybe prohibited them from actually entering the industry and possibly being successful. I'm just kind of curious, like, where is that bottleneck, and why is that actually happening?
Okay, so I didn't quite hear the last part of it. So like when they had adversity where?
Like getting into the industry and being introduced and finding work.
So a lot of the work that I do is not necessarily external, like coming in, but I do a lot of work inside companies trying to like build and grow talent internally. And a lot of the things that I see that, okay, rewinding this for just a second. There's a number of different ways, like this is an entire funnel of things, right? Like you have issues at like when people are coming into college, like who chooses to go into STEM, and you have things going into like, you know, first level jobs, then as you go up the entire pipeline, there's little things at every point. So one of the things that I try to focus on is helping women who are at least at the entry level jobs moving into the second level jobs, and the things that are interesting there, so I can at least talk on that point, is usually communication styles and understanding how to take interesting jobs. Right, so like when you have a whole array of things that you can go work on, figuring out what is the right things to go take, how to basically talk about what you did, and how to give yourself proper credit. And these are not things that are, these are not things that seem like a big deal overall, but being able to actually advertise yourself well internally and also externally is incredibly important as it snowballs over the course of your career. So having the ability to say, look, I'm really good at working on file system filters and kernel data is incredibly hard for some people to say, which means that they will not get promotions. They will not necessarily be up for interesting and difficult jobs. And that's just a difference that people have. So that is an interesting thing, and that also actually even affects hiring. And it's something that we have in the industry. They expect everyone who's interested and passionate in things to be able to talk about it. So.
I just want to talk about how, in general, I think women kind of underestimate their capability, and men tend to overestimate their capability. I read somewhere. So that's one example, right? You know, talk about public speaking. A lot of the women will say, or even men, but women in general will say, I have nothing to say, or I am not good enough to go talk about a particular subject, right? So these are the examples. And again, also meetups or networking opportunities, I also see less women there, more men. So these are the examples, and these are the problems that we try to solve, is just bring more women for networking and public speaking.
Yeah, I'd say networking, and more networking is probably the best way to get over. Because I mean, I don't know why it is how it is with diversity and being, you know, I guess on the bottom rung when trying to get a job. Like, so my full name is Roberto Eduardo Black. My mom's Venezuelan. I don't put that on my resume. I put my name is Robert E. Black, and sadly, that's how I've gotten all my jobs. I do it year after year, or whenever I'm looking for a job, I put it out there as who I am, and I never get a job. And it's the same resume every time. I have a bunch of certifications. I have a bunch of experience, both military and civilian. But as soon as I just put Robert E. Black, I got a job. So it sucks, but I mean, I deal with it. I don't see an issue in the workplace. I don't have like a problem, but it just seems when I go for the job initially it's there. And I mean, I'm sure it's there in every company. I'm sure there's a little bit of, you know, racism or whatnot, but it's never been a large problem for me. Maybe in the next 50 to 100 years, when everybody's the same color, it'll be different, but right now it's there. But networking, having people be able to vouch for you, being able to show your work. I know a lot of good friends that are developers that have created small websites with small applications that when they go for an interview, they're like, people ask, what have you done? And they're like, well, you can go to this website and see this small program or something that I've done, and it helps them out. So it's pretty much be able to show your work, and having someone vouch for you is pretty much going to get you a good foot in the door.
Question over here.
Yeah, so a lot of these answers sound a lot more like what can we do to get people of diverse backgrounds to fit into the mold that exists today as it is, as opposed to if you had an ideal environment, what would it look like for people that maybe aren't as outspoken, or that aren't as outwardly confident, or that have names that, you know, look different than everyone else in the company? What would it look like, and is that even possible, or is part of success being passionate and being able to show that and being able to roar really loud? Like, if you had your perfect environment, what would it look like, and how would it be more diverse?
Good question again. Everyone wants to tackle it first.
I think what you're saying is that we were talking about how we can do something, but what about the environment, right? So I'll give the two aspects of the answer. One aspect is education for companies, and in their hiring practice, perhaps in their job description drafting as a recruiter, because I read it somewhere where the job description sounds very masculine, and women, when they read the job description, they're less likely to apply, or perhaps they will apply and they just seem to be unqualified, right? So definitely education for the company and the recruiting and the recruiters, et cetera, as well as in the company, maybe the decorations and what the team or the manager is paying attention to or focus to, right? So that's the first aspect. The second aspect is, I think as an individual, whether as a woman or not, I'm a person in tech. And I think it is a good practice to network and to write blogs and to teach other people. Because when you teach other people, helping other, like Chris, I don't know where Chris is. Like he was helping out people with Android. I run Android study jams. When you help other people, you actually learn things. And it really help you in your knowledge, gaining your knowledge.
So, in terms of like what would your ideal place look like, right? In terms of, or in comparison to where you have this need to be able to talk about yourself and be able to promote yourself and do all these different types of things, right? So like, what would the flip side look like? And the fact is, you know, you can swing both ways in the pendulum. It happens that tech is very masculine heavy. Other situations and other places are very female heavy, especially nursing. There's a whole bunch of places, I think, like marketing Starbucks, that are very, very female heavy. And they actually make men feel extraordinarily uncomfortable and exit. So there's no good place right now that has a terribly good mix. And so it's an interesting question, and I actually appreciate it because I hadn't actually thought of a good way to even talk about that. So a couple things that I would love to have in a workspace that I'm currently working on building right now, it's going pretty well actually, is space. And it is space where everyone in the group has their opportunity to talk. And that people are graded more fairly in some ways on what actually happened versus what they represent happened. And so I'm actively working on that inside my own team, and my manager is really awesome because I'm really loud about it, as you can imagine. But yeah, I know, it's hard to believe. So I really appreciate the question, but it's so far from where we are right now that it's hard to actually even picture when it comes down to it. But it's really important that we keep that type of space in mind, because a lot of the problems that we have, in my opinion, for people who actually fall out of tech is that it doesn't feel right to them. And after a long time trying to be this way and trying to change the way that you work and the way that you operate becomes incredibly uncomfortable. And you just get tired. I have to come into every day at work and trumpet about myself, and I feel miserable about it. That's not the way you want to operate. And so just build space for people who are quieter, for people who want to build more team and less me, I think is really, really critical. So hopefully we'll get there, and I think having these types of panels and discussing about it is one way that I hope that we can start building it. That's the whole point that we do. We're out here for a reason to talk about this, so other people can start coming with us and seeing why that's valuable.
Yeah, I just want to add a bit on to what you're saying. Is a lot of the leaders seem to be having the personality of extrovert, but some introverts or with a different personality, they could be leader too. They just have a different style. This also ties to culture. Some culture, Asian culture, or particular gender, they could be quiet, but they can be leaders too.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Then at this point, if any of our panelists would like to say one closing thought before we wind up the panel, then this is your time.
Thanks for the opportunity. This was fun.
Yeah,
and good talking to everybody and great questions.
Thanks everyone, and keep learning.
Thank you.
And thank you all for sticking around for the panel. I think like they said, it's important to have these discussions because everybody's different. And so when we have different perspectives, when we have different points of view, different worldviews in any business, it allows us to have a broader field of solutions to problems. It allows us to have more diverse solutions, and it allows us to have solutions that meet broader communities. So I think it's important to continue to have these discussions, and not only have discussions, but see action and see change behind them. But as the saying goes, change, be the change. And so I'm hoping that us here and us out here, that we're all the change, and we all have more diverse workforces that are solving global problems because we have people on the teams that have the insight and the life experiences to solve those problems. So thank you for sticking with us today, and thank you for coming out to the Code Rush in Seattle. We appreciate your attendance and your ideas and your insights and additions to the coding challenges and things we've been doing today. So thank you to our panelists. Let's give them a big hand.